The first impression that comes to our mind about any college: tall buildings, big classrooms, large lobby areas, thick books, IT labs, assignments, class tests, and projects. Nothing besides that. Every hour, minute, second spent here help us carving and shaping our persona, cultivating innovative mindsets for the challenging world. Learning is a lifelong process. Sharing knowledge, inculcating values of life, spark the innovative horizons of mind. Fun and frolic is the nature of every nook and corner here. A daily dose of thrill we are sure to get here.
Good evening to one and all present here. It's good afternoon in United Kingdom. I am Manmeet Kaur, Assistant Professor from DME Media School at Delhi Metropolitan Education. Welcome you all to BG Verghese lecture series organized by DME Media School. First year students have just joined the college a week back, and for them, it is the first BG Verghese lecture series of their academic year 2021. DME is the premier educational institute affiliated to Guru Gobind Singh Indraprasth University and is approved by Bar Council of India. At DME, we are offering courses in management, law, and journalism. DME Media School has a tradition of holding monthly lecture series by prominent journalists, industry experts, and stalwarts from varied disciplines for its students to honor the memory of visionary journalist and thinker Shri B.G. Verghese. He was also the winner of prestigious Ramon Magsaysay Award for outstanding contribution in journalism. These lecture focuses on issues related to media and other matters of contemporary value. Through this series, our students have had the opportunity to interact with noteworthy names of the industry, including Mr. N.K. Singh, Ms. Archana Datta, Mr. Prashant Tandon, Mr. Prabhat Shunglu, Professor K.G. Suresh, Mr. Amish Devgan, Mr. Abhigyan Prakash, Mr. Punya Prasoon Vajpayee, and to name a few. Now I invite Professor Dr. Amrish Saxena, Dean DME Media School and Director, International Relations, DME, to give his opening remarks and enlighten us about today's lecture series.
Thank you, Manmeet. It's a great occasion that though we organize this BG Verghese lecture series almost every month, though there are gaps because of various reasons, and particularly this COVID-19 has in a way derailed so many things, but somehow we have been able to pull on with this particular lecture series. The only thing that has changed for the last 1.5 years that we have gone from the physical space to online. But that has benefited us in some way, in the sense that now we are able to invite the foreign scholars, foreign professionals to talk to us and to talk to our students. So this was a decision taken 2 months back, and the last episode, the last session of this BG Verghese, we invited Dr. Bastani from Iran, who spoke on media literacy. And this time we are lucky that Professor Eylem Atakav, she has accepted our request to talk to our students, and that too on a very pertinent topic. The topic is important in the sense because the kind of papers, the courses that we handle in our undergraduate program of journalism and mass communication, film is one of the papers. Film appreciation, rather I should say, is part of the paper, and incidentally Manmeet Kaur is handling that particular paper. And then we also have papers on research, both the theory and practical papers. And Professor Atakav has agreed to talk about on this topic, which is the impact of creative practice research in film and media studies. So obviously there can be no two opinion on this, that research is and has to be an essential component of any sector of the media studies. And in film studies also, there is a lot of scope for research, though film we normally treat as a students, as practitioners, is something which is hands-on. I mean, which is something which is to be produced. But then there is a theory behind, and there has to be a lot of research involved if we really want to create something impactful, something impressive, which can carry some message, which can carry the audience along, and there is some substance, some such thing which is the real takeaway to the audience. So that is how this today's lecture is really going to be important. And I once again express my gratitude to Professor Atakav to be with us. She has a very busy schedule, but despite that, she could find the spaces wherein she could find time to talk to us. So I'm looking forward to listening to Professor Atakav. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It is my pleasure to introduce our today's expert for BG Verghese lecture. I welcome Professor Eylem Atakav. She is Professor of Film, Gender and Public Engagement at the University of East Anglia, where she teaches courses on women and media and documentary. She is the chair for Teaching, Learning and Scholarship Knowledge Community of NAPSA, an association of international educators. She is the recipient of 2016 Society for Cinema and Media Studies Outstanding Contribution to Pedagogy Award and is HEA National Teaching Fellow of 2016. She is the author of Women and Turkish Cinema, Gender Politics, Cultural Identity and Representation, and the book was published in the year 2012. She is also the editor of Directory of World Cinema, Turkey Intellect 2013. She recently completed an Arts and Humanities Research Council-funded project entitled British Muslim Values. She is the director of Growing Up Married, an internationally acclaimed documentary about forced marriage and child brides in Turkey. She is also the co-editor of Lifeline, a documentary that reveals the reality of working in the front line of the domestic abuse sector in United Kingdom during the pandemic. I welcome you, ma'am, to DME Media School. Ma'am will be speaking on the topic, Impact of Creative Practice, Research in Film and Media Studies. Over to you, ma'am.
Wow, thank you so much for such warm welcome, and thank you so much, Professor Saxena, for the invite. I'm really honored, and the number of people who are on the call at the moment, honestly, that's very impressive. You know, 93, 94 people and increasing. That's just great. So I'm genuinely very much moved by your very kind invite, and to be associated in any way with DME Media School is indeed an honor. So I'm very grateful. Let me start by saying that I have put a couple of links on the chat already, and we may have to recirculate them for those people who will have just arrived. But so what I would like to do is to share my screen first and then start my my presentation. I've got things written down. I usually don't like just reading, but to keep it to the time, I will be referring mainly to my text. So, but I will definitely look forward to speaking to everyone in the Q&A session to receive any questions. And as I go along, please feel free to put your questions and comments as well. So my talk today is entitled The Impact of Creative Practice Research in Film and Media Studies. And I want to start off with something a little bit personal, because I think our stories are what matters. And so what I would like to do is to talk a little bit about my name. So in Turkey, where I originally come from, people's names and surnames still have a sharp and immediate political resonance. This historically stems from a desire to reflect changing realities, usually during turbulent times, and demonstrates how the personal encapsulates the political. My name, Prof Eylem, is an extremely politically resonant name, which literally means go for action. It has an overt link with the leftist political activism that both my parents were involved in the 1970s. My name doesn't only refer to the name of one of the left-wing journals, Atılım, which had to be published clandestinely, but also assigns me the role and pride of carrying in my name the keywords of the left-wing activists who fought and at times were either killed or through physical and or mental torture for their ideas. This extraordinary responsibility attached to my identity has become pivotal in the research that I do as an academic. And today I want to kind of share with you some of the examples as to how what that means in practice as well. As an academic and filmmaker, I feel responsible for collecting stories and experiences, and equally responsible for creating visible evidence of the present moment. And at the heart of this desire lies the thought that we need to take time to understand each other's stories so that we can become more empathetic and inclusive. So in this talk, I would like to share my own research journey, if you like, between academia and activism, and between feminist film theory and feminist filmmaking practice, while highlighting the value of storytelling for social, political, and cultural change. Essentially, what I would like everyone in this virtual room to do after my talk is to take away one message. It's important to tell your stories, and studying film, journalism, media is essential in being able to do so, to communicate those stories as well. And I'd like to revisit discussions around the impact of feminist research in the context of creative practice, and to demonstrate how and why storytelling is a useful strategy as a means for achieving and pushing for social change, with the potential to turn feminist academic research into activism. And thinking about feminist activism, not there yet, feminist activism in media, in addition to examining media from an ethical position, is of course not new. Feminist media theorists have engaged in cultural production since the 1970s. As highlighted in Karen Boyle's 2005 observation, feminists throughout the world have made significant progress in putting questions of violence against women onto political and legislative agendas, as well as in providing services for women victims and survivors, while feminist cultural critics have examined the media's role in the circulation of gendered discourses about violence. As Liz Kelly et al. Argue, within an academic context in which feminism is understood both as theory and practice, feminist researchers' position is one in which they are part of the process of discovery and understanding, at the same time as being responsible for attempting to create change. This idea is also echoed in others' work, as particularly Sten's work, in which they saw no demarcation between doing feminism and doing feminist research. Particularly when it comes to documenting violence, we identify a recent proliferation of documentaries and their potential to provide growing visibility for and to transform public consciousness around issues that have been discursively silenced. So in this regard, what I would like to do is to reflect on the two documentaries I have made. One of them is called Growing Up Married, which is a 2016 piece, a documentary on recollections of child brides and how they were forced to marry people who were much older than them in the Turkish context. And more recently, Lifeline, a documentary that reveals the reality of working on the front line of domestic abuse in the UK during the lockdowns during COVID. So what I would like to do is to take you through to the journey, really. So I want to take you to 2011, which will tell us about the impetus to produce the first film I'll talk about, Growing Up Married. So it really derived from a desire to produce a film that came from academic projects over a number of years, mainly theoretical ones on gender politics, the Middle East, representations of religion, representations of violence against women, and in the form of honor crimes in particular, or virginity testing, or forced marriage and domestic sexual violence in the media in general, but in also films in particular. I don't really work on jolly, entertaining topics as such, to be honest, but hopefully that won't put you off. I started working on Growing Up Married with a desire to hear and record women's stories that were discursively silenced, and with the aim of drawing attention to the significance of activism in media research. So again, just to provide a bit of context, I'd like to take you back to 2011. Women, Islam and Media, which I created, was a module that I taught at final year level, undergraduate level. And it was the first of its kind in the UK. So we did decide to do a press release when I came up with a course title, and it received considerable media attention. So the news went from the Huffington Post to the Guardian, and even for some reason, Marie Claire. And what's really interesting here is the images that were used in reporting the news about this course that I created were rather problematic, and were the images that I was trying to untangle and tease out, and tease the complexities around and so on. But what was really even more interesting was the public's responses. They were rather thought-provoking. And in the process, I've learned that I should never read comments from the public about an article about me. But actually, I was pleased to read them, because I was referred to as an alien terrorist who came to the UK to promote Islamist ideology to our kids. Given that I'm not even religious, that is quite a funny comment to make. But never mind, not that I need to justify that. And I was told that I was invading UK universities by teaching fantasy. And what I did do with these comments was to copy and paste them onto a PowerPoint slide and took them with me back to the classroom, because I wanted the students to see how the public responded to this and why we were studying the module that we were studying. And something quite magical happened. So students decided to make their own documentary about the course that they were undertaking. So they moved from critiquing media to making media. And that taught me lots of things as well. And that also derived from the fact that BBC Asian Network came to the classroom to interview students for a program about the module. We really didn't expect this much media coverage, but it was really good because it gave students the opportunity to engage with media professionals there and then as well. But also police officers, Norfolk and Suffolk constabularies officers visited the classroom to talk about their perspective of how they deal with issues that we were covering in the module, part of issues including honor crimes or forced marriage and child marriage and so on. These things do happen in the UK, and Norfolk and Suffolk constabularies, which are related to the area where University of East Anglia is based, they were visiting the classroom. And then things started getting even bigger, because the House of Lords from Westminster, they had a commission on religion and belief in British public life, and they approached me to write recommendations and review of what British Muslim values meant in relation to women and gender and so on. And what I did was, rather than responding to that national policy, if you like, on my own, I asked my students who were undertaking the class at the time to respond to this request from the government. And end, we end up informing national policy and giving our different ideas, having been doing research on the topic as well. And that led also to a larger project, which was funded a couple of years ago, called British Muslim Values, in which we decided to focus on 4 different towns in east of England to understand what this particular concept of British values meant by giving cameras and training, filmmaking training to Muslim individuals so that they could go and make their own films about how they approached the concept of British values themselves. And it allowed us visuals and data that we wouldn't otherwise have access to as well. Now, the reason why I took you back to 2011 is because Growing Up Married, the 2016 film, would not have come into being without all these things happening and with all these connections with the media, with the constabularies, with Westminster, and with the amount of research, the public engagement that all these required. And it also, and most importantly, meant one thing to me, which I would like to advocate today as well. And it's about taking teaching and research and scholarship outside the classroom. We do that obviously within the classroom, but it's very important to have a public facing identity as academics. It's our public intellectual responsibility, if you like. And out of this, in 2015, I was writing an academic article theorizing about women in Turkey and representations of violence and against women in Turkey. And then I realized one thing when I was sitting in my office and typing away theory. I was actually theorizing about women who I haven't even spoken to. And then I looked around and I said, we've got editing suites, we've got cameras, we've got support, which would normally be all of these things would be normally within an industry context, it would all be very expensive. So I decided to go and talk to my colleagues, go and talk to my students, and we decided to make a documentary. And within a very short period of time, I grabbed the camera, went back to Turkey and started talking to women. And in fact, according to just a little bit of background, essentially, according to the UNICEF report, Ending Child Marriage, Progress and Progress, this was a little bit dated now, 2013, but again, the figures are significant. There were 700 million women who were married as children, and 280 million girls at the time were at risk of becoming child brides. And according to CARE, almost 39,000 girls become child brides every single day, often married to much older men. And that's a 2018 statistic, 16 statistics, sorry. And in Turkey, the reports written by the Turkish Population Research in 2015 revealed that 1 in 3 marriages involved a girl under the age of 18. And so the figures were alarming. They still are. And they signal the need for further and urgent research in the field. And I wanted to explore the effects of child and forced marriage while making women's experiences visible and audible in an attempt to contribute to and advance debates around this significant, complex, and emotionally charged human rights issue. So as I said, I was theorizing about women in Turkey, but I decided to take a camera and go there and put myself out there, if you like. So moving away from the academic ivory towers, let's put it that way. And this kind of was also an attempt to avoid the risk of making generalized assumptions around what womanhood entailed within the context of Turkish society, because there was not just one story, but multiple stories of experience. And it was at that point that I decided to take on this new challenge. In responding to one of feminism's central claims that women's perspectives have often been silenced or ignored, my research is interested in listening to women's experiences. And trust me, I'm very happy to go into detail about this. It wasn't easy to listen to women's violent experiences as well. it takes a toll. And making them, these experiences not only audible, but also visible in the form of a film. This, of course, brings up certain questions. What does a film allow that, for example, an academic journal article does not? A research film not only allows us to hear the voices of women, but also enables us to directly capture the nuances of gesture, facial expression, and vocal intonation and emphasis. This is particularly powerful in the context of sharing the experiences of women and letting the film travel, and it very much did so. So with the film, really, I wanted to give voice to women's stories that were previously silenced. So explored from the perspective of 4 women what happened to them and their childhood, essentially, in relation to being forced into marriage. And some of them, as you can see, and you're more than welcome to watch the teaser later on from the chat. She was talking, for example, about how her daughter was born with a broken arm because Ania herself was beaten and badly hurt during her pregnancy. And what was really, really significant, I'm very happy to talk about the details of the film as well later on, but for me, what was really significant was the fact that the film was a zero budget documentary. I mainly collaborated with my own students who taught me how to edit, who taught me how to do subtitling, and we've done it together. It was me doing the filming on my own, but when I brought the footage back, we together collectively moved from critiquing media to making media ourselves. And when the film was ready to be released, out of over 20 hours of footage turned into a 27-minute film, we did another press release, and the news was great. It went from New York Times to Al Jazeera, and we started using those connections that we had built with women Islamic media in this particular project as well. So the media knew me and my work already, so I tried to use it. And the reason why I'm saying this is because it's very important to collect people and nurture relationships when you don't need to nurture them, because they become really handy, or they may become really handy. The film traveled from international media to international film festivals, lots of screenings at universities. We went from Bangladesh to Japan to America to different parts of Europe as well. And it was an example of feminist scholarship, and it was raising awareness of the issue. But to me, what was really, really impactful was not just the change in the way I worked, but also in the individuals I've spoken to, or individuals who have very kindly and bravely shared their own stories with me for the film, because they've changed policy. And I can now say this, and this is a great moment to celebrate it. Only a week and a half ago, the UK House of Commons have decided to pass the child marriage bill, which this film directly contributed to, because we were screening the film at Westminster, both at the House of Lords and House of Commons, in order to share the information within the film as in the briefings about the child marriage bill. And so what we do see is the power of film, because also Norfolk Constabulary and the National Health Service, they used it in their training of police officers and healthcare professionals, because people need stories. These kind of violent experiences are not things that people speak out about that often. So they are gold, pure gold, and they're really valuable in terms of safeguarding preventing crimes before they happen. In addition to that, forced marriage units, domestic abuse units, safeguarding children unit, they all use the film, and lots of sexual health clinics as well use the film, because these women are not just talking about their experiences of being forced into marriage. It opened up other forms of violence, like not female genital mutilation, but virginity testing, and the concept of honor and what it means. And so for women from within Turkey, and this is for me the most fascinating part about the project, have changed policy in the UK. And you would think these are ordinary women, although they are incredibly extraordinary and powerful. So it's crucial in this context that lived experiences of women is a key place from which to build knowledge and generate social change. And that only by experience can anyone realize how deep and dark is that pit of abominations, as cited in by Harriet Jacobs in her survivors' work. It's crucial in this context to understand that women whose experiences are silenced, whose stories are marginalized, when they speak, they actually become agents of change, directly for their own lives and indirectly for others beyond the cultures they come from. Films in particular, and cultural products in general, represents aspects of reality. And if we want to see a change in reality, we need a change in the films and media and journalism that seek to represent it. This is why making films from an academic point of view helps with making the issue visible and audible, while allowing these stories to travel around the world. I wouldn't even have imagined talking, in India, although it's virtual, about this film. So once again, I'm incredibly grateful. And now I want to kind of move on to my second example, and this will be hopefully much quicker as well to go through, because I'm really interested in hearing your comments and questions. But I want to use Lifeline, the second film that I will use as an example, as a form of academic filmmaking as activism. And what we have done is an 18-minute film. The full film, the link is in the chat as well. And what was happening at the beginning of lockdown was, obviously with COVID in the UK and the obviously global pandemic, was that there were so many media texts that were appearing about the rise in domestic violence and domestic abuse. And there were some failings from the UK government, unfortunately, as cited by the New York Times article you can see on this slide. And as domestic abuse rises, UK failings leave victims in peril, for example. These media texts were particularly interested in victims' points of views and survivors' points of views, and how they were going through the lockdown, which was quite valuable information. But what was missing in this was that there was no news about how the domestic abuse sector, people on the helplines, on calls, waiting to help people who are calling in, how they were dealing with everything that was going on. In March, in fact, Safe Lives, UK's leading charity on domestic abuse, did a survey of frontline domestic abuse organisations for COVID-19 and assessed the extent to which the pandemic impacted on the sector. Services highlighted both the increased risk to clients and the significant challenges they face in responding effectively to vulnerable people under the current circumstances. This survey provided us with statistics that are thought-provoking and quite alarming, including a 74% reduction in service delivery, 74% in total. Women's Aid, they had a really great report that's just come up. Again, another leading charity in the UK, a perfect storm, they called it, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on domestic abuse survivors and the services that are supporting them. And all these, so again, we're seeing a really huge decrease in the number of help, in the number of services that were provided at a time when UK's, again, leading charity Common Nirvana, the UK charity that supports victims of honour-based abuse and forced marriage, reported an almost 200% increase in the calls that they received since the beginning of lockdown. This was reported in May 2020. Respect, which was men's helpline, so it's not just women. Respect saw 100% increase, and Gallup, the LGBTQ plus communities domestic abuse service, had to reduce its services significantly. So the numbers were increasing, but the services had to decrease. In July 2020, Jess Phillips, member of the Parliament, but also Shadow Minister for Domestic Violence and Safeguarding, told me about how she spoke to a small organisation with 4 support workers, 4, and I stress that, in Liverpool, and how they had over 750 domestic abuse cases, some of which were very high risk. Shauna Dillon from Aurora Dawn, another charity in the UK, told me that as many other CEOs of domestic abuse charities, she not only continued to provide strategic leadership, but also put herself on the front line by responding to the calls from the helpline, because they didn't have enough people to respond. In her interview, she revealed, "I don't think I knew what busy was. I now know what busy means. I have worked in the domestic abuse sector for 25 years now, and have never been so busy. My colleagues and I have not worked harder." And this has had implications, of course, on the well-being of frontline workers, as they had generously and tirelessly offered their support to those in need. So the idea of Lifeline, about at this moment in time, it was a desire to capture the present moment as was happening. It was about collecting visible evidence of what was happening at that moment in time. And at the heart of the project is the desire to shed light on and collect visible and audible evidence of the experiences of individuals who work so passionately and tirelessly in providing support to those who need it in the midst of a pandemic. So Lifeline really amplifies the experiences of key workers and key players of the domestic abuse services in the UK from their own voices and images. And so what I've done was to draw on all of the film was shot, all of the interviews, all 27 interviews were shot on Zoom and recorded on Zoom. And they were incredibly powerful, and they ranged from CEOs of UK charities to parliamentarians and the police and professionals as well. But what was really, really powerful in the film was the experience of those people who worked on the front line, on the phone calls, on the helplines, really. And Gina, one of the key workers who contributed to the film significantly, she told us this in the interview. "I realized I was actually contaminating my room. I wasn't sleeping. The stuff you get on the calls can be really, really distressing. Can't go home and reflect on it, because you are at home for work as well. When you're at home, you're on the phone, you're hearing stuff and taking in some of the trauma and the abuse. It goes in more. And it's sometimes because you are in your home setting. You do have to remind yourself, this isn't happening in your own home. This is happening somewhere else." And so it's really literally signaling vicarious trauma, and is exemplified in Gina's words. And as one of the frontline workers that I spoke to exemplified, also, she revealed in this interview that the reason she chose this profession was because she was a domestic abuse survivor herself, who wanted to help others. And she said, "I realized actually that you know, the blurring of boundaries of workspace and home space is not unique to the sector, of course, but the emotional labor that I had to put in was enormous. And she said, we don't, you know, as domestic abuse workers, we don't just trip into this role. We choose it because we have experience of it too. So it was highly thought-provoking that every time I asked the question of how are you to these interviewees for the project, every single one of them, from MPs to CEOs to frontline workers, they answered my question by talking less and less about themselves, but more and more about the great teamwork and the collectivity that they could see throughout the pandemic. And so Lifeline has now been selected for lots of international film festivals. It's been screening, it's received awards and so on. We've been talking about it, me and my co-director, Carolina Pelican. We've been speaking about it at conferences, doing some public engagement events, and we did an online screening. There was a UEA, University of East Anglia's live launch event, which introduced all the people who we interviewed for the project as well. So the link is there, you're more than welcome to. I'm very happy to share it with you afterwards as well, no problem. But what was really, really exciting was it already, within a very short period of time, the film has had impact on policy. So Safe Lives, the organization that I referred to earlier on, organized well-being sessions for frontline workers of domestic abuse and sexual violence services sector in the UK as a direct result of the research that went into the film but after seeing the film. But also women's health strategy consultation was going on by the UK government at the time. And so the film and the research alongside it have become or have been submitted as evidence as part of university submission as well. So just to wrap up really, to really conclude, as academics, we are agents of positive change. That's what I would think. And taking part in collaborative work that binds people, states and nations closer together is crucial. All of us in academia, from faculty to administrators, from staff to students, we are rapidly becoming aware of how our innovative engagements with shared social and global responsibilities can facilitate change. In my case, it has been mainly about consolidating feminist research and activism through storytelling and story capturing. And I would like to end by saying that as my name, action, reminds me at all times, there is incredible value in taking action. So I will stop there, but I'm very, very happy to take on any questions and comments if you have some as well. I hope I've done okay with timing, by the way. I know we've got limited time.
Ananya, yes, please switch on your mic. Ma'am, there are students, they want to ask a few questions.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good evening, ma'am. I'm Ananya Verma. And first of all, we're really obliged to have you on this platform. It has been really interesting session. So my question to you is, can you cite some examples where such researches in film studies has actually contributed in societal transformations?
Wow, that's a good one. I think if you think about it, well, I mean, I can only talk about the people that I know, I work with. So one of the current PhD candidates who's about to submit his PhD has done an amazing documentary about representations of homosexuality in Egyptian cinema. And he's done this as a gay man from Egypt. And so, and it's got lots of sensitive issues and lots of issues around censorship, but he's already making a change in history. So it's not necessarily just about changing policy as such in the present day, but also uncovering histories is very important. Another PhD of mine who's graduated, Dr. Qureshi from Pakistan. He has recently finished a fiction film, which has won lots of awards as well, which is the first film that focuses on intersex characters. And it is a fiction film, it's not documentary. So again, it doesn't have to be documentary, but it can be fiction. He's already contributed to lots of discussions around this topic. Another person I know who's about to submit her PhD as well. In fact, she's got a defense next week on the 9th. She's done a documentary, almost like a video essay, not even documentary, video essay about refugee crisis. And all these things take time to influence things. You know, capturing impact is a long-term process. So I can't say they have immediately had impact, but the mere fact that they're contributing to what's going on in society and creating discussion around it is more than enough. But there is it's a growing number of creative practice research in the field. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question. And I'm still working on it as well. I've got a new project that I'm working on, and it's never ending. Once you're in it, that's it. That's good. But thank you, Ananya.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yes, Sophia.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, ma'am. According to you, how has the rise of social media altered the researches taking place in the film industry, film studies specifically?
The rise in social media, I think, it's a big one, isn't it? Because it's very important that, you know, that quote where they say, you can't be what you can't see. And so it's really great that social media has allowed a platform for lots of people who we didn't know about, who we didn't see before, to be seen and be visible. Particularly in film studies, which is mainly dominated by film industry rather, which has been historically dominated by, say, Hollywood, because we're all brought up with some kind of Hollywood movie, right? So it has changed that. It has shifted the focus. Now we see more world cinemas, if you like. We see different things. And in my talk as well, I wanted to raise that point, which I would like to reiterate in this answer, which is about the relationship between representation and reality. If we do want to change reality, we need to change the ways in which we represent that reality as, you know, media studies scholars, students, film studies, journalism studies students and scholars. And I think social media, although there are so many negatives attached to it as well, I think it has allowed people, citizens, to speak out of their own experiences. And as human beings, genuinely, stories are all we have. You know, even if we can forget everything else. I was thinking about this as someone who's lost her grandma to Alzheimer's. Even when my grandma was at her worst in Alzheimer's disease, she could still remember her memories and she told stories. And so stories, if stories are all we have, we need to share them, and social media is a great platform to do so. Hopefully that answers your question, Sophia, but thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, Vinayak Yadav.
Yes, ma'am. Hello.
Yes, Vinayak, you can ask your question.
Hello, ma'am. It's a great honor that you are with us. Ma'am, my doubt is like film and media researches in India are generally stifled by lack of funding, and how can one approach in international agencies for seeking opportunities like in UK or America or in different parts of Europe?
Vinayak, so it's a very good one, and it's a very difficult one. Unfortunately, our discipline is perceived by some people as Mickey Mouse degree. You know, there's nothing wrong with Mickey Mouse. I can talk about Mickey Mouse for an hour and theorize about how, you know, the racial implications of Disney and so on. So, but your question in general is is about how to reach out to the industry. You know what? The best thing to do is to ask yourself, what have I got to lose if I send this email? First of all, you know, if you have ideas, if you want to be part of different projects that you're aware of, what's going to hurt? All people can say is no. And that has been my motto all the way through, not in just academia and life in general, you know. And one you might have heard of her. She's done a film in India, actually, documentary filmmaker Biban Kidron. She's done a speech when we gave her an honorary degree at the University of East Anglia, and she called me irrepressible. I think it was a good thing. So I would say be irrepressible.
Anyone else who wants to ask the question? Yeah, Jyoti Mishra.
Ma'am, good evening.
Yes, good evening, Jyoti. Ask your question.
Ma'am, my question is, film studies generally use qualitative method and it is a popular way of conducting film studies. Do you see scope of quantitative method extensive use in such researches?
Oh, wow. You know, that's a very good question. Yes, why not? Absolutely. Quantitative methods are equally important. You know, there's content analysis, isn't there, to particularly used in research to look at film marketing and how, you know, every time I hear quantitative research, I just go to content analysis and count the number of times you see a Rolex watch in Bond films. But that's as far as qualitative research goes. But absolutely. And we shouldn't even think about film studies with just the usual traditional ways, you know, methods that we use that are quantitative, not quantitative, qualitative. But we can think about the impact of film studies as well. Hopefully, with the examples I've shown you, it was interesting to collect evidence to show the impact that the films have created. And you do need quantitative analysis to be able to kind of engage with the impact of the work that you will have conducted. Absolutely, but it's still not very common, is it? Still not very common.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, anyone else who wants to ask the question? Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much. Here, I would like to contribute something related to that social media question, if you allow me to do so. Since I believe that when people, they used to watch the television, when we used to watch television in the year 2014, a channel was launched that is Zee Zindagi, where we used to watch various kind of Turkish programs from Turkey. So here, what I believe that television, it has actually introduced with the new concept of interculturalism, where we are actually exchanging the various ways of different cultures from other country people. They are watching our serials and we are watching their serials. And of course, social media, as you have said, that social media has actually changed the way where people, they can put their perspective, they can put their beliefs, they can put their problems, challenges, opportunities, everything on social media. And recently I have watched one of the video on social media where if I'm not able to pronounce the full name of that Kardanish Roma community, where you have pointed that little brides, they are getting married, and the same community, they are forcing their little girls to marry at a very young age. And I think it is somewhere in the Western or the Eastern Europe, nearby Turkey and Syria border. And they are actually forcing their little girls to marry at a very young age. And so I'm very much impressed with your documentary and with the content and the line which you have put in your presentation. I have just written that line, that the women, they are actually the storytellers of their own conditions, of their own problems, and they can actually become the agents of change for their own lives and the social structure. One of the beautiful line in your presentation, ma'am, indeed a very intellectual, enlightening session. And the session, you have also put in the other forms of documentary making, like the Zoom interviews, which is actually very much different from the real space interview. So actually, we are looking forward for more deliberations and for more intellectual sessions from you, ma'am, and requesting Saxena, sir, because we are actually going to our upcoming film festival, and I request my dean and head to actually fix one session with you in our upcoming film festival. So actually, we are looking forward for more deliberations and sessions from you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would absolutely be honored to do any work with you, any collaboration. And if it's a film festival, I'm in, count me in, in any shape or form. And if anyone here would like to ask any questions or would like to get in touch, I never run away. I would like to think I'm a friendly person. So do feel free to contact me if there are any projects. And the Turkish TV series, oh my goodness, that's another documentary there, I'll tell you. They move from all sorts of parts of Asia to Latin America. And I was brought up with Latin American TV series as well. So things are definitely changing and it's becoming much, much more global in a good way. But thank you so much for having me, everyone. And I really appreciate your time and energy. It's just been absolutely great.
Thank you. I'm requesting Dr. Susmita Bala, head from DME Media School, to kindly address the gathering and share her thoughts for today's BG Verghese lecture series. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Manmeet. Good evening, everyone. This was very interesting and informative session. Thanks to Eylem Atakav for sharing your ideas with our students. The students benefited a lot with your talk. I am sure of that. Professor Atakav, I am happy to know that you are an activist. You have been dealing with issues of gender, violence, religion, terrorism as an academic, as a researcher, as a filmmaker. I appreciate your resolve of taking up a big challenge of bringing a positive change in the lives of women. I have no words to appreciate your work. It is commendable. We are grateful to you, Professor Atakav. Thank you for being with us. Thank you. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Extending my vote of thanks to my students from DME Media School who have spared their time, who have attended the session in this beautiful evening. My sincere thanks to Dean Professor Dr. Amrish Saxena, DME Media School, Head DME Media School, Professor Dr. Susmita Bala, my colleagues, and all the attendees of this session. And of course, my sincere and my thanks to the guest of this evening, Professor Eylem Atakav. Thank you so much, ma'am. You have spared the time. You have interacted with our students. Thank you so much, ma'am. It was indeed a very fruitful and benefited evening for today's BG Verghese lecture series. Thank you, everyone.
Manmeet, I want to add something.
Please, sir, please.
The most important thing, obviously, the work, the tremendous work that Professor Atakav has done is, I mean, really phenomenal, beyond any appreciation. But the most important thing that is struck to my mind, which I also believe in always, that the academic persons are the agents of change in society. That's the most remarkable thing for all the teachers, I mean, who are in the profession of teaching, that our job is not merely to take class, but it's beyond that, wherein we become instrumental in change for creating a better society. So I'm really impressed by this. There's a quotable quote which I will put in my record and will always tell about this, that once you decide to become a teacher, then how your work, your opinions and everything changes accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice time. Stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.
In DME,
we believe in engagement and empowerment of students. And since the time this COVID-19 struck in 2020, we intensified this whole process.
For the education sector, it was a big challenge. At DME, our small dynamic team decided to take this challenge head-on.
We organize different kind of programs, different webinars wherein the distinguished people from the industry and other walks of life, they are invited to interact with the students. We try to keep them engaged in taking out newsletter, writing stories, editing stories, and not only that, they make posters, they make cartoons, they write pieces for the newsletter.
Mentoring Cell at DME is a very unique feature in the ecosystem of education. While the subject teachers forge the knowledge domain strongly, it is the mentors who reach out to students in difficult times. During pandemic, when our students faced loss of their loved ones, home isolation, and several other family issues, mentors ensured that students remain cheerful, lively, and stay connected with us.
We have ensured that our students are treated with compassion, warmth, and gentle touch. And it has been our endeavor to treat all the academic activities of our students, which includes PSDA, internal assignment, and various other curricular activities accordingly.
Research Cell also pays huge emphasis on interdisciplinary nature of research. In order to promote this, the research centers of the Research Cell were also motivated to join with each other and conduct research activities for students, faculties within DME and outside DME.
While the strong academics and great industry connect is building great lawyers, media persons, and managers at DME, we at Mentoring Cell are enabling these future leaders to be compassionate, emotionally strong, and resilient for any times to come.
We empower the students. All the schools of DME, they have their students' council. In DME Media School, this council is part. They organize the program themselves, they take their own decisions, and they mobilize the students for all the good cause.
Art has the power to unite and connect during the times of crisis. Bringing people together, sharing, soothing, and inspiring are powers of art, which have been made empathically obvious by the DME cultural societies during the COVID-19 pandemic. By taking different innovative approaches in organizing various virtual competitions and events in which the students of DME have taken part with great enthusiasm and proved that DMEians are unstoppable.
Care with compassion is motto of DME. During Corona period, we were always with our students. Their well-being is primary for us. We take care of our students.
We met the expectations of the students, of the parents, and above all, of the industry. The placements this year were better than those of the previous years. DME is committed to supporting its students in all possible ways.